Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Straight Talk with Bren O'Brien and Tim Rowe from The Straight, brought to you by our sponsors, Inglis and Darely. Today, a crazy week in the Everest. After all these rumours, will Ka Ying be the king? A chat with Chris Ward, who'll be aiming at a third Everest victory on Saturday with Mazu. John Kanga's sudden departure for the Melbourne Racing Club. The ATC fights back. In breeding, we chat with Sebastian Hutch, have an extensive chat actually with Sebastian Hutch about the Inglis Ready-to-Run Sale and other industry issues. We celebrate 3 generations of Guineas winners. And wagering, we look at a new addition to the Tabcorp board and what does Ka Ying Rising do for betting in the big race? Tim, welcome to you and welcome to everyone from sunny Sydney. And we'll be trackside at the Everest on Saturday, but we're here today at the Riverside Stables to watch a successful Ready-to-Run sale, which we'll get to in a minute. So let's go back to last Sunday. The rumours caught fire about Ka Ying Rising, whether he was going to run in the race or not run in the race or run in the Everest. Did you get caught up in it? At one point, did you think, oh, hang on, there's something going on here?
Well, it was funny. I saw the fake tweet of Gareth Hall and sort of thankfully picked up on it straight away. I thought, oh, that's fake. Someone, after the Ray Thomas fake accounts and different things like that. But then I started getting messages from, pretty clued up punters, sort of professional, semi-professional people going, is this right? I said, no, it's a fake. It's definitely fake, blah, blah, blah. 3 hours later, you get a message from the same person. You sure? The betting, blah, blah, blah. And then I was getting calls from, Malaysia. Selangor was racing on Sunday, getting calls. Ka Ying Rising's out of the Everest. It's going rampant around Royal Selangor. And that's how far it had spread. And I was like, no, it's fake. But then the Tab and Sportsbet and with suspended markets and it got out to sort of $2.60 plus on Betfair for not insignificant amounts of money either. So it was quite extraordinary how it sort of spread and, well, on face value was fake and not correct.
Yeah, it was funny I played out. Of course, David Hayes had the luxury of, I'm sure that he didn't want this to happen on Sunday when his phone was melting down, but the horse was effectively working, doing fast work on Monday. So he had Monday morning to prove that the horse was fine. He did that. Everyone was sort of pleased with then, although there has been rumours even during the week, here and there, even around here, the sales thing, what's going on with Ka Ying Rising. We even heard Sestina might be destroyed for the Cox Plate at one stage here today. So it's interesting at this stage. There seems to be a very speculative environment at the moment, Tim.
And I did go and quickly run across to Zhunjiang and the Yulong tables. Like, I've heard this, I'm sure it's not true, but they've poured cold water on that. It's definitely, she's barring anything going wrong in the next 10 or so days, she's definitely running in the Cox Plate. So we can put that one to bed, even though, I would trust the source normally. Yeah. But it's just, I guess this time of year, people love rumours and, on Ka Ying Rising is, dare I say, a polarising horse. People who got, it's Hong Kong form, it doesn't stand up, or he sweated up badly in the trial, before the trial. So there's lots of opinions which is helping shape the market.
Yeah, and there's just about 75% of the market, but probably about 95% of the interest at the moment. You wonder what the race would be like without him. Racing is about opinions, as we said, Tim. Would you back, well, I know the answer to this because you have backed him, but would you back him? Is he the horse you think will win the Everest on Saturday?
I wouldn't now. I was at the pub a few weeks ago and I think it was the Shorts was run or there was a couple of races. I was like, well, they can't win. And, you just got caught up. It was, drinking and gambling started off. And so hopefully I'll get paid for that so-called mistake. Look, would I take that price now? Probably not. But to be fair, I think I'd want to see him in the yard. If he was pretty calm in the yard and not like he was before the trial, I'd probably be more confident. And, it's probably a late bet now and certainly not on the tote with Whirlpool.
One of those hoping to beat him on Saturday is Mazu, coming to his third Everest, as I said. He was the last horse into the race this week. And you caught up with Chris Ward early in the week from Triple Crown Syndications to chat through his prospects for the races and his memories of the successes of Red Cell.
Chris here from Triple Crown, obviously a long-time, well-known syndicator, well-known with success in the Everest, and you've got another runner this weekend with Mazu, a late caller.
Yeah, quite amazing to think that he's back in there again, having his third attempt at the Everest. But look, he's been in really good form this preparation. He's been running well behind a couple of the leading chances in the race when we're talking horses like Briasa and Jolly Star Jimmy. All those sort of horses, he hasn't been far off them this prep. And I think he's a very honest horse, a tough horse, and he'll run a credible race.
We always pushing to try and get him in the Everest, or was, obviously Yulong came calling, probably over the weekend, but you always harboured hopes that he would make it again.
We did to some degree. We sort of thought we would be in the Sydney Stakes and we knew we were going to be running in one of the races on the day. So from a preparation point of view, I don't think it changed anything for Joe. But yeah, no, we were hopeful that we might be able to secure a berth. And luckily got that late call up, and unfortunately for Yulong to lose Private Harry beforehand.
This Mazu is quite an extraordinary horse. The amount of money he's won and bonuses, but he's also under Joe's training seemingly probably showing more early speed and not necessarily just a wet tracker.
Yeah, he's a funny horse. He's always been a little quirky. He was always very highly strung, probably the first half of his racing career. And Joe's done a wonderful job with him. He's a very settled horse now, certainly much quieter and more relaxed. And I think that's reflecting out on the track as well. He's a happy horse. He's enjoying what he's doing, most importantly. And as you say, he's been showing good or really good early speed, probably more than ever. And yeah, he's in a good vein of form.
And obviously, you won the first two Everest, I think it was, with Red Zell. You're well acquainted with the race, but how's it developed in your eyes? And we at the barrier draw, say on Tuesday night and things like that, and how much momentum the race has generated?
Yeah, it's been obviously a particularly good race for us over the years. This is our sixth running in the 9 years of the Everest race, and so we have seen it from day one, where it was a brand new concept and we weren't too sure what to make of it. It was pretty audacious sort of an idea of a race, but it has developed a lot over the years, and now obviously the crowds have just been getting bigger and bigger every year. It's amazing when you walk out the front there before the race and turn back and look at the crowd. It's just enormous. There's atmosphere like you don't see on any other race day throughout the year, and even just broader than the racing industry and true followers, the people out there in the general public, I've noticed it really pick up, especially in the last couple of years, where they're just not even fringe race goers. They just have had no other interest. But it's a bit like that Melbourne Cup, where people learn it's on and they want to know what it's about and want to get involved. And it's certainly capturing that younger generation as well, which Peter V'landys always goes on about. But he's spot on, and he's right, because that's where a lot of the interest is.
And from a business point of view, how are you going syndication-wise? Obviously been around and successful for a long time, but it is a more challenging time at the moment with discretionary income and things like that for probably syndication market particularly.
Yeah, that's the reality of it. The last couple of years have been like that, sort of probably post the COVID pandemic, when things were sort of unexpectedly booming, I guess you could say. But things are still trucking along pretty well. I mean, we're actually sold out of all our stock this year, which is great. We're back here at the Inglis Ready-to-Run Sale looking to try and find some new horses for the team. So I'd say they're not super strong out there with the market. It's a little conservative, but people are still keen to get involved.
And Triple Crown going well. Obviously, you've changed a little bit. Michael's doing his own thing, and some new partners in the business.
Yeah, that's right. We've got Sam Mannion's come on board and running the business with me, which has been fantastic. He loves getting involved with it all, loves his racing, loves sharing all the experiences with the owners and that sort of thing, and giving them a great time, which is obviously a huge part of it. It's not all about winning and losing. Obviously, it's a big part of it, but everyone gets into it to enjoy themselves at the end of the day, and we want to make sure we give them a good experience, and Sam in particular does a fantastic job with that.
And just back on the 2-year-old sales, is that a format you've shopped at in the past? And the yearling sales aren't far away, trying to manage your clients' budgets, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. No, traditionally we haven't done a lot of the ready-to-run stuff. We've typically stuck with the yearlings. However, we did dip our toe in last year. We got one out of this sale, actually, who was Hay Street, who's turned out to be a very talented horse. He's a stakes quality horse, so we'll come back and we'll try and find another one or two like him if we can. But yeah, the Magic Millions in January is looming very fast, and obviously there's a lot of new horses coming on the market then, and we'll be there again.
Thanks very much for joining us, Chris, and all the best this weekend at the Everest particularly.
Pleasure, Tim. It's pretty exciting to be a part of it again.
Just quickly round the grounds and racing, Tim, and let's talk about the story of last week, I suppose, late last Friday, as we were ready to sort of pop the cork on the weekend and ready to get stuck in maybe with a Friday night beer. News came out that John Kanga had left the MRC. The politics of racing is pretty brutal, isn't it, Tim? I mean, we probably don't need to talk necessarily about the specifics of the issue. Obviously, there was some suggestions have been reporting around his past and what that looked like and what that may have meant for him, and he decided to effectively fall on his sword ahead of that happening in order to, what he said, I think, trying to remember the word, but pretty much protect the image of the MRC during their busiest time of the year. Yeah, I mean, surprising in some way, but there had been a sense of a bit of momentum building around some negative publicity around John Kanga for some time.
Yeah, we've heard heard rumours, and that, and we've got to point out John Kanga hasn't been charged or found guilty of any crime there, but there's been murmurs, and it's one thing to hear those rumours, but from a journalist and media point of view, you've got to be able to stand them up legally too. So that, the Age went with a story, and obviously would have been legal pretty heavily.
Yeah.
So, it's not as simple as just publishing a story like some people might suggest. And, if you go invest that heavily in time and resources to build a story like that, you probably do release it on Friday or before a major carnival to maximise the effect. That's just part of running a business of what media is. So
well, you put a story out when it's relevant, put it out when it's not relevant. But it's an interesting one. Do you think there's a way back for Kanga? Tim, would you be surprised? I mean, I think there's a sense that he's still got a lot of popular support out there, but do you feel like perhaps when things die down a little bit, he might be a chance of being revived at least on the committee, or do you think that it's probably the last we've seen him in this sort of role?
You might have a different view to me, but I just can't see what a way back for him and why the board would, they run a big gambling business and pubs and pokies and a racing venues, and why they would A, allowed it, and B, why would he want to? What's the motivation to come back apart from proving himself? But it's not like a paid position. No. So monetary value, maybe want to come back to try and restore his reputation. I'm not sure, but I just can't see a way back to John. And again, main thing being a motivation as to why.
About the same time last Friday, the ATC pushed out a response to the commentary from Racing New South Wales around the show cause notice. It was an interesting timing. It probably didn't get a lot of coverage. You covered that story at the stage. I was in Kanga Land covering that story, and you were into the ATC one. I mean, what did you make out of that? It appears to me that the ATC are sort of putting forward that the way that their financial situation was put forward by Racing New South Wales was probably not accurate as things sit right now.
Yeah, this was a notice to members from Tim Hale, the chair. They sort of were trying to rebut quite a few of the statements or points that Racing New South Wales and Dr. Sarah Ann Cook made in her bulletin, industry bulletin. They say they've got 22 million in the bank now and growing from last financial year and growing, and revenues are going up and the financials looking healthy. The governance issues that were cited, they claim or so suggest that that dates back 15 years, nothing to do with the current administration or certainly the directors. So they're stating their case, and Tim Hale said that there'll be another members update before the show cause hearing. Just whether it falls, whether they get the right result, I'm not sure. I can't give a guide one way or the other at this stage, but it's playing out quite publicly at the moment between both sides.
A couple other stories come out this week in the racing space. Racing New South Wales cleared of contempt charges by the Parliamentary Privileges Committee, but they did get a significant rap over the knuckles. The language used in that report is quite significant. Have a read of it. It's on the straight at the moment, but I think the phrase was deeply disappointing or deeply troubling. There was some language used there which was quite interesting. The other story to come out today was that there's been a significant track issue at Moonee Valley ahead of the Cox Plate. Have a look at the straight again to have a look at that, but that was an interesting point there. Michael Brow, the CEO, spoke to him today. He's pretty confident that everything should be fine to go ahead. Of course, we've got Breakfast with the Stars next Tuesday morning. That's an area around the 1,500 metre mark that had to be dug up to deal with the drainage issue. So we'll see what plays out from there. The following segment is brought to you by Darely. We've talked about emerging stallions, and let me throw another name into the mix, Native Trail. Breeders couldn't stop calling him the best-looking stallion on the Darely roster. And that's on top of being a champion 2-year-old and a classic winner at 3. The scary part, his foals are just as sharp-looking as he is, like Too Darn Hot all over again, but with his own twist. Native Trail has the looks, the race record, and now the foals to back it up. He's staring you right in the face. Native Trail, standing at Darley Kelvin side for $27,500, including GST. And joining us here on Straight Talk is Sebastian Hutch, Inglis Bloodstock CEO, after a successful Inglis Ready-to-Run Sale here at the Riverside Stables. Sebastian, it was obviously a good day's trade. Things seemed to work out really well for you guys. A record gross of close to $9 million. Some positive things, a strong clearance rate. You must have been pleased with how it evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose internally we set ourselves some lofty expectations for the sale. We wanted it to be a record. We felt we had the stock and we felt we'd prepared in a necessary fashion to give ourselves a good result. It always manifests itself slightly different to what you anticipate, but ultimately very pleased with the buyer participation, with good buyer engagement with the sale. Vendors were inclined to want to meet the market, so we had clearance rate of 74% on timing. The gross, I'm pretty sure, will go past 19 million. So when you consider the previous record was 16.7 million, really pleased with that, and I think it puts us on a good footing to continue to develop and grow the sale.
On Hong Kong, Sebastian, as we know, is a pivotal part of the market, particularly the middle to top end, and they there was hardly a trainer or a representative that works that market that wasn't here. There's a few trainers that never go to a sale, but aside from that, you had nearly everyone here that you would want.
Yeah, even in the case of some of those people from Hong Kong who weren't here, they had proxies at the sale, agents working for them or other representatives, Australian affiliates working for them. So that was great. I mean, we're very proud of the success our graduates have in Hong Kong. English graduates win more races in Hong Kong than graduates of any other sales company. Then we take great pride in that. But we have a lot of good relationships in Hong Kong and a good reputation in Hong Kong. It's important to us. And the benefits of that are very much in evidence, not just a sale like this, but right the way through the sales series. I mean, we saw it through 2025, where it was Classic Premier Easter. We had tremendous Hong Kong support, and it's very much in evidence in here in the context of this market. But I think that's only one facet of the success of the sale, an important facet, but just one facet. And I think it's something we do well, but something that we're determined to do better. And I think that bodes well for the future of the market, certainly for Inglis.
Just on this format, this 2-year-old sales pre-sale format. Obviously, in Australia, it's not as developed as it is probably elsewhere in the world, in Europe and the US, but there does seem to be a bit more enthusiasm for it. I mean, obviously, there's the Asian market, which is a key part we've spoken about. But in terms of the local, I guess, ability to embrace this concept, how much growth? I mean, I think by the sound of things, you think there's significant more growth in this sale in particular, but also in the broader format. I mean, how do you capture that market and convince Australian trainers and syndicators and buyers that this is a place they should be shopping?
I'm not sure. I mean, we're going to work pretty closely with vendors over the next few months to determine the format for the sale for next year. I'm not sure that the way that the sale is formatted currently, the way these sales are typically formatted in this part of the world, is the optimum way to run the sale. And we'd very much like to run the sale in a similar manner to how they run these sales in Europe and the US, where the breeze and the sale on a consolidated period over the course of a week or 5 days. There are some logistical challenges to that. We run the sale at Warwick Farm. We'd be looking to conduct the breezes at a busy training centre. But I think that's a challenge. It's manageable. I think that sort of thing where there's the opportunity for local buyers to engage more constructively with the breeze itself and with the horses that are breezy. I think that'll be an important part of giving domestic purchasers more confidence in the market. But what I will say is that, very clearly it's a sale format that appeals to the Asian market. And we had a lot of domestic trainers here looking to get involved. I mean, Chris Waller will be very much a driver of the Hermitage participation. We've had Adrian Bott out here with Claudia and Emma, Kieran Mowers here, and on the buyer sheet, Mick Price always buys at this sale, likes buying here. There's some of the leading trainers I can think of off the top of my head, but we've had tremendous engagement from local trainers and syndicators. But it's been a really competitive market. I probably thought the domestic buyers might be in a position to strike more of a blow than what they have. But time and time again, just found the sales getting outbid. So, look, I think this sale is such a good platform for the future of the format. But I do think there are changes that can make the sale better again. And one of those will be the actual structure of the sale.
Could that, you talk about making it bigger, like get stretched to 2 days or something like that?
I wouldn't say stretching 2 days would be on the agenda in the short term because of the logistical challenges of trying to run the breeze, etc. But I first of all, I'd like to try and continue to grow the quality of the horse and the quality of vendor that we have at the sale. It's becoming more and more professional. I think this was the most professional set of breezes we've run, and I think that's borne out in the results. But I do think there was scope for improvement. Just in terms of how we go about certain things. New Zealand sets a very good standard in terms of how they conduct their breezes. The best practitioners in New Zealand conduct their breezes, and jockeys they use and the manner in which they breeze the horses. I think there's still room for improvement in terms of what's done here. It's not to say that people don't do well, but I just see there's an opportunity to do it better. And I think that'll all be part of giving people more and more confidence that this is a sale format that they can embrace ready.
That vendor, I guess, reputation is a really crucial part of the success of the sale in Europe and North America, as you know. And I guess, as you develop more specialised vendors, people get known to buying good horses for them, so they manage to work it out. I guess, how do you convince those vendors that this is the right place to sell those? Obviously, your key competitor or in the Australasian market is what goes on across at Karaka and NZB. I mean, how do you encourage, buyers is one thing, but also to get the quality of stock here that probably they've had along the way that they might have had a bit of an edge on?
I'd be surprised if there weren't some people who participate here and participate there.
Yeah.
Or some people who might have curated their participation here in a certain way. Or some people who you've chosen not to participate here at all will be looking at the sale today with some degree of FOMO and wishing they'd been here, because there'll be buyers who will have done their dash here. Like we're going to turn over north of 19 million. That's a lot of money in the context of the breeze-up market. That's a lot of money to take out of the market. It's a big jump on where we were 12 months ago. I think we might be at the best part of 3.5, 4 million 12 months ago. I think that sort of thing gives vendors confidence to say, I want to participate in that. It's very much an evidence to our yearling sale series. People follow the money and people follow the buyers. And if they feel like you're doing the work to get the right buyers, and that's borne out in the money that you're turning over, where they want to be part of what you're doing. More generally, the sale format's an interesting one because in other parts of the world, the key races are 3-year-old races.
Yeah.
In Australia, the key races for a lot of the major trainers are 2-year-old races. Certain breeze practitioners in Europe and the US have carved out a niche themselves as managers of precocious horses, which those big trainers might not necessarily be. So, our practitioners here have to be a little bit more versatile maybe than what they are in other parts of the world. They've got to be able to provide stock to go and win different types of races to what they might in other parts of the world. I don't think this is ever going to be a sale format that's going to be somewhere where all the major buyers go to buy and try and find a golden support. I don't see it trending that way, but I do see it trending in a way that people see themselves being able to buy back in 2-year-olds, really good spring 3-year-olds or 3-year-olds right the way through the season. All the horses that can develop, and the export market is going to be a crucial part of this market longer term. So I do see ways in which it can progress.
How do you go? It's for all sales companies providing credit, to the right vendors, and how much to, allow them to buy quality horses to service the market, which has probably been one of Inglis's keys the last couple of years, is the quality of horse you've been able to get here, which is in turn giving credit to the buyers to be able to buy them.
Well, it's basically you're investing in people, right? I mean, we want to grow the sale format, so to do so, you've got to invest in people, and it's very satisfying to see those people do well today. People who've gone out, worked hard to identify yearlings, worked with our team to try and identify the right sort of yearlings, and then have those yearlings come through as 2-year-olds to the sale and sell well. You got to keep investing in the right people. So, we're in that respect very much open for business. We want to try and, there's no secret. We're working hard to try and facilitate participation of these people in the sale. And it's something I think we're going to want to continue to do, and ultimately believe that we can reap dividends from it in terms of turnover and under 24.
2026, Sebastian, is going to come up pretty quickly, and obviously straight into the yearling sales season. What's sort of your view of where the market's at the moment? What are you expecting next year? Are you expecting, it was relatively positive this year. It's not gangbusters that probably was 3 or 4 years ago, but there's still a lot of positive signs in the market. What's your sort of feel about how the market's going to progress next year and where things are going to sit?
Oh, look, you kind of look at it from two perspectives, right? You look at it from the broader market perspective, and then you look at it more myopically from an English perspective. Yeah. And from an English perspective, the market this year has been incredible.
Yeah.
Like we're going to have the second best year we've ever had in terms of turnover. We've established significant market share and a significant margin over our competitors in terms of market share. The swing in terms of those numbers over a 6 or 7 year period has been like really extraordinary, and something that our team takes great satisfaction in. And, ultimately it's a reflection of the support we've had. We've worked hard to try and engender support from people and deliver those people results. And that's satisfying, and that works out well. In terms of the market more broadly, certainly our market was stronger than what we anticipated. And I went to the Magic Millions in January. They ran a good sale. It was down, but they ran a good sale. I came away from that sale thinking that's a good benchmark for the year. I didn't go to New Zealand at the end of January, but we had representation there, and they said, look, they ran a good sale. It was down, but they ran a good sale. And so we're very much prepared for our sales to be down. So for Classic, Premier and Easter, and then the HCBA sales and Weanings and Chairman's to played out the way they did was, I felt like reward for effort, but a pleasant surprise. I don't think on the basis of how the first 2 sales of the year played out, we could have anticipated things have worked out the way they would have. very clearly there's good demand in the market for quality stock. And it's very much in evidence around the world that, people want to buy nice horses. I take very little, other than the demand for quality stock, I take very little form line through what's happening in the US and Europe. I mean, they just run a record book 2 at Tattersalls. That's, in terms of the health of the market, that sale is the best guide. I mean, book 1 is great, but book 2 at Tattersalls is the best guide, I think, for the year in Europe as where the market sits. They cleared 88%, record growth, but the median was down a bit, the average was down a bit, clearance was down slightly. It's getting trickier there. And I think if you ask me as I sit here today how I feel about next year, I feel a bit about next year how I felt about last year at this equivalent stage. It's going to be trickier. There'll be an element of Darwinism about the market. We're going to have the people who are really good at it and people consistently do things well or continue to do well in the market. And for those people who might be hobbyists or not quite operating at the same level as the competitors, are going to find it a bit harder again.
The Australian stallion ranks, or Australasia really, we've lost Snitzel, Wooten Bassett. It is challenging finding that next group of stallions to come through that are commercially successful and on the track. How do you see it at the moment where the industry's placed stallion-wise?
I suppose from our point of view, there's a lag with that. Yeah. Snitzel dying, we don't feel the effect of that for 2 years, maybe even 2 years.
Yeah.
And so there's always a bit of a lag. We're in the process of starting to finalise the catalogue for the Classic sale, Premier sale, and then finalise the Easter a little later on. As you sit here today, we're seeing really good yearlings this is the first big extreme choice crop we've had. I don't say big, but like extreme choice of 40 yearlings. There's plenty of yearlings by extreme choice. There's a 2 darn hot crop to get excited about. There's a Wooden Bassett crop to get excited about. Big crops for home affairs and stay inside. Both of them started very well. Strictly in terms of the yearling market for 2026, quite enthusiastic about it. I mean, even just the introduction of different stallions, Superset, for example, in New Zealand is a significant factor now. Ole Kirk is a massive factor. Bivouac is an interesting horse. Loads of young horses. Animals, a fascinating first season stallion. You have horses like Ying Chaos. Imagine how big a factor Harry Angel is going to become on our market now. He looks like an exciting stallion. You can't get anywhere near it. So look, it's always evolving. Very jealous of the position they're in the US, where they just look to have an extraordinary group of stallions and tremendous depth in them. But like 12 years ago, 10 years ago, they tap it and nothing else. Right? So
it cycles around.
Yeah, it's somewhat cyclical. Even in Europe, some of the more established stallions are just getting a bit older. They have what looks to be a reasonable flow of younger stallions coming through, but who knows? I mean, what's a stallion lineup going to look like in 5 years' time? I mean, it's we might have a roster. We might have a general size list headed by Harry Angel, 2 darn Haas. Wooden Bassett probably with the crops he has here going to make a big impression. So I'm reluctant to overthink it because it's just mare population and support of breeders of particular stallions is hugely important. If you ask me, one thing that probably of particular concern is just the volume of stallions.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting thing. I mean, we have a situation in New Zealand where there's one first season with first yearlings in 2026. That's maybe it's something of an anomaly in the context of their market, but it's a bit of a shock to the system. And we don't have anywhere near the same volume of stallions coming through in Australia that we have had in the recent past. And that's going to affect stallion lists in years to come. So, I don't think we can afford to be complacent. I think we're seeing evidence of stallion masters being very open-minded and want to prepare to embrace from overseas. It's fantastic to see horses, volume of shuttlers still staying solid. You look at the horses that made a big impression on the market the last few years, Wooden Bassett, 2 darn Hunt, etc. And I think it's important to have those stallions. It's great to be able to have exposure justified for Coolmore, Cogburn coming down to Widden. We're going to want Yulon. Yulon won the Jewers last weekend. Yeah. That's a horse good shuttle here in a year or 2 years' time. It's important stuff. So hopefully we can continue to maintain some level of genetic diversity, and because Australians breed good racehorses, we won't want to see Australians continue to breed good racehorses, and the stallions are a big part of maintaining people's enthusiasm.
Sebastian, just well, I've just picked up one more point you said before about the concept of it, the market next year becoming a bit more Darwinian, a bit more survival of the fittest. And I guess some markets are like that cyclically, I suppose. Is there a concern that it's actually not a cyclical thing, that longer term, that it's going to become fewer and fewer like participants in this market in terms of the breeders, etc., because it just becomes harder for smaller guys? I mean, how does the industry and broader market respond to that, and what's the sort of impacts of that happening if it doesn't turn itself around?
Look, I think it's probably a question for people better qualified than me to try and answer. I have an amateur view on it.
Yeah.
I think we maintain, I know there are concerns about the size of the fall crop, and legitimately so, but we do have a healthy size fall crop. And we have a fall crop that's supplemented by significant numbers of international horses each year. Like the volume of horses coming in from overseas is not insignificant any given year. You know, from the point of view of an Australian-based auction house, that's probably not something that I'm particularly exciting about, but yeah, it is a factor. I think for as long as there's a willingness amongst breeders to continue to invest in quality stock and breed quality stock, yeah, I think there's every reason to continue to be optimistic about it. And I don't see any reason why in the short term people aren't going to continue to be enthusiastic about it. And as long as we continue to run a good racing product and have a good racing product, I don't see any reason why that won't continue, because the medium and so on too.
Sebastian, thanks so much for your time, and
pleasure.
Well done in 2025.
Really, thank you. It was great. It's great to have you here, and look forward to having you back 2026.
So, Tim, it was interesting to hear Sebastian Hutch there talk about the stallion pair in Australia. Some really interesting comments there from Sebastian around that. I wanted to reflect quickly on the Caulfield Guineas last week and the win of Autumn Boy, who may be adding himself to that stallion collection in the years to come. Who buys him and what's he worth, Tim?
Putting a figure on these things is quite difficult. It was interesting in the ratings, guys. Dan O'Sullivan, I see ranked him sort of at lower end of Caulfield Guineas winners of recent times. But I think on his type and pedigree and his scope, got a lot of upside, especially at 2,000 metres. Whether he presses onto a Cox plate, doesn't seem like it's Chris Waller's go, but he's owned by one person, Glenn Ritchie, a bus proprietor from New Zealand, who's sold his company for a lot of money, investing in racing now. It's fantastic for the Waller stable and racing in Australia and New Zealand for that matter. And look, he's got a lot. I'd say he'll emulate possibly side the Autumn Sun in the autumn and go through Randwick Guineas, Rosehill Guineas, things like that. Yulong for favourites, you've always got to have Yulong as favourite and anything stallion prospect at the moment. This is their power and the horses they're buying and the money they've got behind them. And whereas Arrowfield, I would say, would be second favourite because just that attachment to the sire line, Redoutes, the Autumn Sun.
Yeah.
Obviously, they had lost Schnitzel, unfortunately, this year, and now Autumn Boy, John Massar and the Arrowfield team don't seem to be perturbed by having too many by the one stallion. If they're a good sire line, they back it to the hilt, and I'm sure they'll be making a call to Glenn Ritchie and Guy Mulcaster and Chris Waller, trying to either buy part or the whole horse. And said I don't know Glenn, but from what I hear, I can't see him selling out early. He might sell some part, but he'll want to enjoy the ride of having a good horse. Fair enough to him. You don't think he needs the money, so it's about the thrill of having a good horse, and good luck to him.
And he's come a long way in a very short time, that horse too, so he's got a bit of upside. It always comes that, as you mentioned before, his sire and grandsire both won the Caulfield Guineas, and it's an interesting feat. That the first time that's happened to the Caulfield Guineas. In fact, I went through almost all of Group 1 in Australia. Taking a look at the wagering world now, and did want to go back to the Everest briefly with Ka Ying Rising. It's a peculiar market. Like, he's $1.60. He's dominating the market in a lot of ways, leaving aside what we spoke about before with all the rumours and everything else. It seems a really interesting one to me because in some ways we're expecting to probably open $1.20 in the Whirlpool on Saturday, or jump about $1.20 in the Whirlpool on Saturday, given the Hong Kong interest. Betfair sort of been in and out a little bit. The corporates are carrying a significant liability from when he was backed at larger odds beforehand. Yeah, how do you get a view on this market? For me, it's the weirdest feature market I've seen, with probably the exception of the Deauville Legend Melbourne Cup, where all that bet-ar money was flying around.
Yeah, well, on Betfair's probably a different case because short of price favourites create turnover and matched money, but certainly the corporates. I think when Ka Ying Rising was rumoured he was coming, there's a lot of money for him then, because I think the Australian sprinters is not a standout. They take Jolly Star's a very good horse, Lady Shenandoah. Look like the next big thing, and she still may be. Just sort of didn't work out at Moonee Valley last start. So there's just so many positions and opinions you can take in this race. And I think and people are like, well, Ka Ying Rising is $1.60. or even money it was for a fair while.
Yeah.
I think. Well, that's gross unders. I'm betting against him, or vice versa. It is just a complete moral, and I think they'll be leaving aside Worldpool, but fixed odds and Betfair. I think it'll be fascinating how that plays out, because I think the mounting yard and how he behaves and et cetera in the yard will have affect the big syndicates and how they price him, I imagine, and just everyday punters wanting to go, have their bet on the race, and one of Australia's signature races for sure, the Everest.
Yeah, and Tab reporting that their hold on the race is twice as much as it was this time last year. Ladbroke something similar. Sportsbet indicating big numbers as well. I think Betfair are holding 240 out of their 280 they were holding yesterday. 240,000 out of it, 280,000 was trading on him. So it's a very dominant position. It will catapult the Everest into be the second biggest betting race in Australia. It'll probably still be only quarter as much as the Melbourne Cup, but it probably is a significant moment. It does surpass the Cox Plate and Caulfield Cup this year. Quick more around the grounds on wagering. Entain had their quarterly results yesterday. Australian market's still struggling a little bit. Their turnover seems to be pretty steady, but their results aren't great. So it's a sort of a funny situation at the moment with Entain in Australia. They probably are looking for some positive results, but that turnover figure is probably a positive for them longer term. Tab Corp have announced a new board member, Vivian Stewart, and on Monday their AGM is on, and Jill McLaughlin's expected to get up there and give his sermon on the mountain, keep everyone excited about national tote, etc. So it'll be interesting listening from that point of view. Keep an eye on the Straight for that. Thanks for joining us on Straight Talk and the beautiful surrounds of the setting sun in Western Sydney here at Warwick Farm. This podcast, of course, brought to you by our fabulous sponsors, Inglis and Darely. Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you're listening to us, and be sure to subscribe. Send us an email at editor@thestraight.com.au. Yep, thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you again next week.